I'm joined by the Vice Mayor, Rex Richardson. He's not in Houghton Park. That's a he's
We're always in Houghton Park.
But he's joining us to talk about something really serious today. The city's rental assistance program, like many other cities across the country, has had its struggles in getting the money out to landlords to help pay for back unpaid rent for tenants. And he has introduced an item that will be discussed next Tuesday at the City Council that he hopes can help speed up that process. As always, we're live on our social media channels, so we have somebody sending me questions. If you guys choose to send them in, if you have any questions of the councilman. But yeah, let's start off with the item that you've introduced. So we have $64 million in the city to help renters, and we've only been able to get about 18 million of it out. So what are you asking what are you asking to change to try to speed that up?
So first, I want to just give some context. I mean, the city's done a good job on this rental assistance program. We just have responsibility to continue to lead, like we've done this whole pandemic. When it first happened, from testing, we set up quicker. We have our own health department. People liked that response. Vaccinations, national model. We're now rolling out the third vaccination. All of this is a part of that same effort. Sick days for workers, that was important to handle. Hero pay for grocery workers, all of that. Now we're in a place where we're in the recovery. The most significant tool that we have to keep people in their homes is the ERAP program. And so, like you said, the city has, you said 19, we paid out 22%. No, California's paid out about 22%. There's a lot, we got to move a lot faster for a few reasons. One, as you mentioned earlier, the Board of Supervisors is evaluating what they're going to do around the eviction moratorium, but it's really not in our hands. We don't necessarily control that, what happens with the eviction moratorium. What we know is 16,000 households in our city are behind on rent. That's what we know. Long Beach, compared to other cities, we've allocated almost 19 million. That's good. It's one of the best numbers in California. And we've also been recognized by the Treasury for that. The Treasury actually highlighted Long Beach as an example. But that's about 2,500 households. And we have a responsibility to learn what we've learned and learn from what we've done in the past few months and accelerate and streamline the process. The reason why there are still 9,000 applications in the pipeline that have not been completed is because there are administrative burdens to the process. Tenants will say that it's maybe complicated, it's burdensome, the number of documents. In some cases, if it's an online format and you have a digital divide issue, which we know is real, if you don't have access to the devices or the ability to streamline or upload your documents, that may be a barrier from getting those completed. And so if we know that that's the case, what can we do to get the money out faster for more people? That's the question. And so in talking with and looking at research, and there was a study, the Urban Institute study said 36% of all applicants say that the reasons they haven't applied or finished an application is due to a complicated eligibility requirement. Another 21% say that have difficulty finding their documents. Landlords are saying the same thing. Landlords are saying that there are currently right now 2,000 landlords who have initiated the application, but they've had a hard time getting the tenants to complete their side of it, to go into the platform, complete their side. So what we're proposing is a single application streamline process based on geography. We can tell you right now, based on the 9,000 applications that are there, you may have a cluster in the same building, people behind on their rent in one building. We should be able to approach that building. The city can initiate it. The tenant or the landlord can initiate a single application process. Get everyone on one application. Let's make sure if they're missing certain documents around verification, there are things that the federal government is now allowing and the state is allowing to allow people to attest to, yes, I live 50% AMI. My whole building is 50% AMI, and I'm missing this document or I'm missing that document. Then we can work together to get everyone on one application. What happens if you have 5, 6 people in one building, but you know there's 3 or 4 others who didn't know about the opportunity? Rather than start their individual application, piggyback on this application. And now you're working together on one application, you can now have the ability to extend up to 3 months of payments in the future and further protect more people. The idea here is streamline the process to get more money out to serve people. That's the idea here.
Whoever would have thought it would have been so hard to give away $64 million, to people who need it. What I mean, and one of the issues, and you mentioned this in the item, and I mean, and this is something that our reporters have heard from people. The city's been working with community groups to do outreach to hard to reach communities, communities who may not speak English and go through a number of other struggles in this process. But what you're proposing is, physically going to these buildings. How might that help people who don't have access to the internet to access the city's online application portal or maybe not even just, they don't even know this program exists because they don't, read the newspaper or, can't read the Long Beach Post because we're an online newspaper, and probably aren't watching this live feed, but how getting on the ground and going to these buildings that have incomplete applications, how does that make it easier?
Well, look at it this way. Being on the ground allows a more culturally sensitive approach. You're able to get out, talk to people, explain what's happening. I mentioned digital divide is one issue, but imagine, you're undocumented renter. You're going to be doubly impacted. Sometimes the documentation people are looking for simply doesn't exist. They may not understand what an attestation form is. And so we need to work together to make it easy to get the funding out. The thing is, by making it easy, one application process can be initiated by a landlord or tenant. That means landlords could, potentially bring in tenants who otherwise may not know that the program even exists or are unable to provide certain documentation. It aligns the interest between tenants and landlords, something that we need in the city, right? The more we put the funding out, the more likely it is that we receive additional funding because the model works.
Right.
This will require, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was going to say the Treasury has, they still haven't established a cutoff. So, even though, just for, more context, nationally, only 30% of the money that has been given to every state has been used, which is wild. So starting at the end of the month, the Treasury has said that they are going to start taking money away from cities that haven't made a good enough effort to get it out. And over the next few months, they're going to start redistributing it to cities who have. So if Long Beach is able to speed this up, you're saying that we have an opportunity to get even more money to continue to help renters down the line.
Look, we're leading the way today, but at the current pace, it's going to be August 2022 before we get all our funding out. We need to think about adding additional ways to accelerate it. LA's program, they ended up shutting it down and sending money back to the state. And at one point, they paid out most of its money to people who are the least vulnerable of eviction. And so I think managing it local, we will be rewarded for getting the funding out the door. We're going to be protecting more people. As we move forward, our economy is just going to get stronger. We want to front load this as much as possible. This is about our economic recovery. That's what it is. The reality is there's always going to be a lens of racial equity on these things. How do we make sure that we're, going to Latino, African-American, API households that may have language barriers? A lot of times they're in the very same zip codes that are dealing with food insecurity and other layered issues. We learned all of this. We know the K-shaped recovery. We've talked about this, that the recovery, if you were making a certain income prior to the pandemic, you're actually doing fine, maybe even better now. But folks who are living in poverty, the people who need these funding, they're actually still heading in the wrong direction. So the fact that we are looking for ways to continue to innovate and lead, this is good for our long-term recovery for our city. That's sort of the impetus for this.
Well, we have one question. First question, ready for it? I don't know what the answer is. What about helping people who only rent a room or a couch? I don't know if the city's program can cover that, but is there space?
Yeah, I guess I would need to find out if couch surfing is available. But I think if they have a lease and they're renting a space, I think that's eligible for renter assistance.
If they're like subletting a room or something.
Yeah, I think that could be eligible, but then again, that's a great question to find out.
So we've mentioned it a few times already, and the vote hasn't happened. It's still ongoing. The County Board of Supervisors public comment session is a lot longer than the city council usually. And I believe they're still in that. But today they could vote. They're entertaining the idea of possibly extending the eviction moratorium until the end of January 2022. If that happens, and then your item is passed, that'll be decided next Tuesday. Sure. Having that additional 5 months to try to get this thing rolling, I mean, how important is that going to be?
I think it doesn't. I think it's incredibly important to protect as many people from falling into homelessness as possible. We had a homeless crisis prior to the pandemic, right? I think economic insecurity and poverty and all of those things are work that the city has to be engaged in. Historically, people talk about when my grandmother lived in this city and when she was a taxpayer, we always had enough money to go around and XYZ. The reality is, this is not grandma's city anymore. And we have to put significant resources into homelessness and all of these different issues that are new burdens, realignment, all of that. And so right now, it's in the city's interest to keep people from being evicted. That's in our city's interest, whether there's an eviction moratorium or not. We don't need to make the homeless situation worse. The most significant tool that we have is the ERAP. It's working. It just needs to work faster and for more people. We need to take the stringency down in alignment with state with federal guidance, take the stringency down. If we know people are living in this building and they make this income and they can't find their layoff letter or whatever it is it more important to have the layoff letter, or is it more important to keep those people from going into the ranks of homelessness? And so we have to do this whether there's an eviction moratorium or not. We need to get people caught up on their rent.
Right. But I mean, the eviction moratorium, I mean, assuming that the county, the state for sure ends on Thursday, the county potentially could be extended, but if it doesn't, people could start getting, notices to leave on Friday, which renter advocacy groups have pointed out that means people are going to be getting evicted at Thanksgiving or right in the holiday season. Why? I guess what your item was introduced yesterday, a few days before the eviction moratorium potentially ends. It looks like it might not end. Why did it take so long for a new approach to the city's program, considering that while it has been better than other cities, it has been struggling to get the money out from the beginning?
I think some city, when the rules came out, I think every city had to figure out how to get it done. Some cities like LA just gave the money back, couldn't figure it out. Long Beach is small enough to be nimble, test things out, figure it out. And if it works, others pay attention. It's important that Long Beach test something out like this. The single application streamline process is happening in other states. It's not happening in California. We will be the first city to do this. Treasury has put out guidance saying it's a good idea, right? It's a good idea. So we have the responsibility to lead. So I don't think this is about catch up. I think we've done the program, we've seen some success. Now it's time to accelerate and protect more people. Let's just go back to why this program is important. It is our most significant tool to help people get caught up from what happened over the past 18 months. We can help cancel their back rent. People have been talking about canceling rent. This is the way you can cancel the back rent for as many people as possible and protect them for an additional next few months. Yeah, and you're rewarded. The sooner we get the funding out, if they realign funding to other cities, Long Beach would be in a better position to receive more funding to help Long Beach voters, help Long Beach residents and people and all their people to get out of, this situation that they're in.
Right. And your item, along with the simplified application process, you're also asking for an additional 3 months aside from back rent. So if someone is in the
Right.
program, they get approved, they get all their
Mhm.
back rent paid, and then also an additional 3 months from their last back
Right.
month. And then you
Right.
also are asking for the data to be made public on a public
Right.
dashboard. What are you
Absolutely.
looking for in that aspect of it?
I think we're heading in a direction where people expect data and dashboard. Look at our COVID dashboard. I mean, it's a regular habit of me and my household to actually look at the dashboard to see how we're doing. I think the rental assistance is a very significant tool. I think people would love to see how we're doing in terms of the ratio of incomplete applications to complete applications, geographically, where are they breaking down across the city? Are we getting them out in areas that have digital divide issues? I think that's a level of transparency we need to do. And we're exploring very similar things at the ports around air quality. And so I think adding a digital dashboard, and I believe some jurisdictions have dashboards up. I think the priority for me would be to get the funding out and then, focus on dashboard. But within this motion, we are asking staff to look at standing up a dashboard, which is consistent with just having a transparent modern city.
Right. And I should say that, anybody watching, if you think you're eligible, the city, while it has closed the application period a number of times, they've said now it's going to be open until the money's gone. So if you haven't applied, if you haven't applied yet, go ahead and apply, because it is open and there's no end date as of right now. We have another question. And this person is asking, is the program just for people that are behind, or is it for people that have been affected by the pandemic, like having their hours cut, struggling to pay rent, but not behind? I depleted my savings paying rent. I think that I know the answer to that question from talking to development services over the last few months about this, is that you can't, they're not going to pay if you put your rent on a credit card. They're not going to pay your credit card bill. Unfortunately, you need to have the non-payment of rent to qualify, right?
Right. And the new guidance that talks about those same renters that have been behind can get up to, they can get rent and utility paid bills. You can project out what they are up to 3 months and get that additional protection as well. And we haven't done that yet in Long Beach. Some of these things we're doing pieces of. As we're learning, as the guidance is changing, we're doing pieces of. What we're talking about is taking all those things, taking full advantage of the Treasury's guidance and making it easier, less stringent to protect people for additional time.
So with when you're talking about putting more people on the ground to go to them versus having them bring their stuff to, and some people can't do the online thing. So are we talking about renewing contracts with these community groups that had previously been under contract with the city to do the outreach? Are we talking about temporarily hiring more people or shifting more people to development services, kind of like what the city did with COVID testing, where you had public works people out there, directing traffic at Veterans Stadium? What are you thinking on that?
The city has a vendor who's already going out and following up with folks. I think this adds another tool to be able to have one application and to cover everybody in the building. And by making it to where tenants can organize around it, you already have tenants who organize, who say, hey, we're going to organize around this building. This is something to organize around. Let's get these people caught up on their rent. Let's get them on an application. So it gets tenant groups engaged. It gets landlords to be able to engage. We already see, based on incomplete applications, clusters of entire buildings where there's clusters of incomplete applications, and we know who those landlords are. This allows us to go there and have a method, a remedy to heal those applications, get the funding out. In terms of outreach, I think we absolutely should look at making sure we have proactive outreach, community groups and otherwise, and our vendors otherwise, to get out and do that. Is there an opportunity to do so? Sure. I think as a part of what I'm asking staff to do, they're going to think about what's the best way to get this out in a way that's, doesn't break the bank and prioritizes getting the funding out faster. That's the idea.
Right. Obviously, if the supervisors extend the moratorium today, it gives you a little bit more time. It gives not you, but it gives residents more time to figure out how to get this applications turned in and completed.
That's the very reason the supervisors are considering it. It's because everyone expected the rental assistance funding to be able to get out faster, and we see that everyone's having challenges getting it out. I think that's the impetus for potentially extending the moratorium for this very reason.
Right.
So we shouldn't just rely on the eviction moratorium. It will expire at some point. We have to get people back on their feet.
So my question was, is when are you hoping to have an answer back at the city level of if this is possible and how it's going to be done?
Well, I think, in talking with city staff, they're already at the table with the state. They're exploring some of these ideas already, the attestation form and other things. I think what we're asking them to do is figure out what approval we need from the state. So they're at the table already. They're also going to be updating the vendor contract at some point soon. So the timeliness is making sure that this direction is given to them as they update the vendor contract, because the vendor's who's going to have to develop and implement this. So making sure that happens prior to the updating of the vendor contract. Secondly, we don't know when the eviction moratorium will go away. And so that sort of helps raise the stakes here. And so, as well as the approval that we need from the state. So I think this is something that is possible. The city's doing some of these things together. Mm-hmm. It's about bringing it into one package and offering one simple, streamlined, comprehensive tool, single application for the building. You can target it by clusters of incomplete applications. You can target by vulnerability. Let's say, we look at areas that we know are going to be hardest hit based on economic data, 90813, 90805. Let's say that those are zip codes we really want to focus on. You could look at vulnerable buildings and then initiate applications that way in order to prevent the most vulnerable people in the city from slipping to the ranks of homelessness. Right. It just opens up the playbook.
What we have another question, but I think it looks a lot like the last question that I asked you. That somebody it sucks. A lot of people borrowed money from like family members and
right.
To pay rent, and unfortunately I don't think that qualifies for the program. I don't know if there's room for that at the council level to request a change that would. Because this is, there are a lot of strings attached to how this money can be spent, not set by the city.
Right.
But as far as, if you could just remind everybody watching, because I don't remember if the county does extend the moratorium, does the city have to take a similar vote, or is that going to be automatic?
No, we voted to align with what the county is doing. So we are on the same timeline as what the county does.
So if the county extends it today, this Long Beach, will you have to vote on would it be a vote, or is the city automatically going to align with?
Yeah, I believe it happens automatically. From my last time when they extended it, we automatically went along with it.
Right. Yeah.
So we wouldn't have to continue, relitigating the vote, and then we're sort of operating under the same rules as what the county does. Because we're surrounded by 87 other cities, and we're the second largest city here. We need to sort of have some alignment there.
Right.
Right.
Well, we have somebody in the other room monitoring that. We'll let you guys know what happens once that vote happens.
Yeah.
County meetings can take all day though. Sometimes
they can. They're full time. This is what they do. We have a part-time council. We do our meetings at night.
Yeah.
Right.
And the next meeting is on October 5th, which is when this item that we've been talking about is going to be discussed. Obviously, with any item, there's dialogue. Sometimes things change. People add their own friendly amendments, which is something that you'd have to accept as the person who's introduced the item. Right. What would you be open to in terms of changes? Maybe things you guys haven't thought about.
If people have good ideas and it's feasible by staff, I typically take time and work with staff to see if these things are feasible before I introduce them. Right. So, I've been talking with staff and talking with, I hear from tenants, I hear from landlords, I see the data of how many incomplete applications there are. I see why they're incomplete. I see an opportunity here. And my staff paid attention to that Treasury guidance that came out and said, hey, this looks like an opening for Long Beach to lead, and to make sure that we're helping as many people as possible. And so the Treasury guidance, Treasury's recognized Long Beach for its leadership on this program. Again, we've demonstrated leadership on vaccinations, on standing up for workers, on keeping people in their homes. I think Long Beach has done a good job in responding to this pandemic, But that comes with the responsibility to continue to lead. And I think Wade, at the pace we're at, we'll certainly help people. We've helped 2,500 households already, but I think we have a responsibility to get this funding out as fast as possible, as simple as possible. We'll respect all the stringency rules. We'll make sure no one's, cutting corners. We'll make sure that it stands up to the auditor standards and financial management standards. But the reality is the people who need help may not have, an online application and portal may not be the best means to help people.
Right.
And we have to be able to, we can do that, but we have to be able to get to people where they are in vulnerable communities and give people a tool to save as many people as possible. That's the impetus for this.
And we have a few minutes left. So, for everybody watching, I'm assuming you have access to the internet or can get it. If you want to go to the city's website, it's under the development services. You can simply, you can Google Long Beach rental assistance. It'll be the first thing that pops up. It's on the development services website. They have longbeach.gov/LBDS. Yes. And forms are available in Spanish, Tagalog, and Khmer, and as well as English, obviously. So, they have all the forms that you need. We talked about the attestation forms because the Treasury loosened up the rules, and now they're just letting you say, like, I made this much money, instead of having, if you can't access your pay stubs, or if you got, laid off and you're no longer in touch with your former boss, or they don't want to produce it. They've kind of made it pretty easy to get this money. It's but still a struggle to get out enough of it in time. One more, we got another question. This might be the last one. What happens if a landlord is not cooperating with the process?
So the process can go two ways right now, right? You can have the tenant initiate the application. You can have the landlord initiate the application. What we're proposing is group single batch applications. That just adds another tool to make it easy. A landlord can approach a tenant, tenant can approach a landlord, just makes the communication go both ways, and a simpler process, and people can piggyback onto the application. That's the goal. Now, if there are we do have staff. If someone has an application, they're showing good faith, they want to get paid, and there's a barrier that they need their landlord's participation, they should engage with the city. We should have our vendors available to help figure out a way to make this happen. We want to err on the side of helping people stay in their homes as long as possible.
Right. But I think in terms of if currently anyways, the rules have changed quite a bit with this stuff. But if your landlord is not participating, I think that you're eligible for less back rent to be paid, and they are allowed to evict. Whereas if the landlord does participate, the landlord is not allowed to evict because they've had all the back rent paid. Right.
So that's certainly something we can continue to look into. A lot of the guidance is not local, it's state, it's federal, and it changes, and we have to navigate and figure out how it works for us best.
Right. And I think that was a state that came down from the legislature, how that was constructed.
The state stringency is much higher than the federal stringency. We got the federal money out pretty quickly, and now we're on the state dollars, which again, we're moving faster than other cities. And that's why we may have the ear of the state to look at this alternative path. And we'll see. We'll see. If it happens and it helps people organize and we protect entire buildings from eviction, great. If the state says no, then, if the state says no, we'll continue to innovate and get the money out as fast as we can.
Well, a lot of people certainly need the help. And those are just the people that applied. I'm sure there are people who haven't applied yet. So add how many ever more thousands on top of the thousands of uncompleted applications that the cities has right now and is trying to get completed. We have about a minute left. So just wanted to thank Councilman Rex Richardson for joining us from Houghton Park to talk about the rental assistance program and how he's trying to get this item passed that could potentially speed up the process, make it a little bit easier, get this money out faster. And by Treasury rules, that could potentially mean that Long Beach gets more money in the future to continue helping residents. We will keep you updated on if the county votes to extend the moratorium we have, let's see. If you, we have a podcaster who is much better at this than I am. Her name is Jackie Ray. If you want to
I
subscribe
know Jackie.
if you want to subscribe to Jackie Ray's podcast, she's a Saints fan, but that's okay. It's called The Word on Long Beach. You can also, if you liked what you saw here, or if you want me to not talk, they might be able to factor that in. Donate to the Long Beach Post at lbpost.com/support. Tune in Tuesday night. We'll both be there at the city council meeting, and we'll see what happens with Mr. Richardson's item. But yeah, thanks to everybody for tuning in. And
one plug.
Go ahead.
Tonight we're after we break ground on the Forest Park Environmental Education Center, new hub operations for Conservation Corps. We do that at 4. We're gonna have a community meeting at 5:30 called Thrive 90805, where we talk about our efforts to create a greener, healthier North Long Beach through air quality, conservation, other steps. It's a series of meetings, and this is the second edition of Thrive 90805. So join us at DeForest Park at 5:30.
DeForest Park at 5:30.
The groundbreaking's at 4. The meeting's at 5:30.
You can go to both. If you got a clean, free afternoon, just go up to DeForest Park up in North Long Beach and hang out with Mr. Richardson. Talk about getting North Long Beach cleaner and greener. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank
Take
you.
care.